Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural broadcast for the inaugural round of the Assetto Corsa Aussie Downunder series for 2020. There's been Supercar series before. This is the first time that they've hosted an ATCC Group A series, and it's a very small field tonight, but hopefully that field will grow over the course of the 15 race calendar that is set for the remainder of this year and the first couple of weeks of 2021. For those of you that have been a fan of this channel for some time, you'll know who I am. But for those of you who are new to the broadcast, my name is Steve DeVries. I've been a commentator not only in the sim racing world but in the real life world for a couple of years now. This is the first foray for this channel into the Assetto Corsa broadcasting, so there might be a few little niggles here and there, but for the better part of it, I hope you enjoy it, and feel free to offer up any sort of comments in the live chat as we go along tonight, and we'll do our best to respond as quickly as we can. Practice session is not too far away from finishing up, and then we'll be straight into a 15-minute qualifying session. But before we get too far into proceedings, a look at what's on the road in this ATCC series. As we said, it's a 15 race calendar, with the majority of those races taking part between now and a couple of weeks in the lead up to Christmas, and a couple of weeks break, and then the first 2 weeks of January, all taking place on Saturday nights. You can see in there as well, not only are we going to a number of the historical venues that we've been to in the past for such events in ATCC, but a few of the more modern facilities that wouldn't have seen these cars before, such as the Bend Motorsport Park. And then there's a couple of weird ones there as well, the flyaway rounds, I guess we can put it. Singapore and Bahrain going to offer up some unique challenges with not only the advent of two completely opposite circuits to each other, but the fact they're going to be night races as well. So a big torture test coming, not just under lights, but the Singapore Grand Prix circuit there, the 13th race on the calendar, ironically. An unlucky number for some, but going to be a big torture test around the Singapore streets under floodlight. Just waiting on the last few moments of the practice session to finish up, and then we'll be underway. Looks like the qualifying simulations have just started to get underway at the back end of practice, and Terry Marwood with his VK Commodore heading the list comfortably 0.8 of a second ahead of Shannon Wright, and those two appear to be the only two that have actually performed any qualifying simulation runs in the last little bit of practice. And looks like we're just flowing over now to qualifying session. There's just a few moments before that gets underway, so let's have a look at this Adelaide street circuit from 1988. Of course, the circuit that has been shortened in length since the last race that was held here for the Formula One cars in 1995. This edition of the track, 3.7 k's long, 16 corners. A number of very, very tricky parts of this circuit. We have a look there, you can see the opening centre S, turns 1, 2 and 3. Bit of management over the curbs. Then the cars head along towards turn 4 along Wakefield Road, turn right into East Terrace, up towards Hutt Street, and then along the back, the very famous Brewery Bend at the top end of the circuit there, which punctuates the very short Jones Straight, and then the very long Brabham Straight drag down to the hairpin, and then back through the Adelaide Parklands and into the start-finish area and pit complex again. Looks like everything is just getting underway now. Cars are starting to take to the track, so we'll go over and pick up the action. And Nathan Higginson, the first man out on cue, locks the brake going into turn 4, heading up to East Terrace. And he's getting the back end out there as well, so very, very Larry on the loud pedal on the warm-up lap, and a little too Larry actually. Round he goes, coming off of turn number 6. He's had to let a couple of other cars go through here. There goes, I think it's Shannon Wright in the flying brick, as one of my co-commentators likes to put it, the Volvo 240. And he's just ahead, and now having to let the man through of, that was Marwood in the VK Commodore. As we said, it was top of the timesheets in the practice session. I think Nathan just looks like he's enjoying himself out there at the moment. Doesn't care too much in the back end out. Let's see if we can cycle up and pick up the man who is at the head of this queue. Terry Marwood with the number 11. The Perkins livery on the car. NZ, one of the sponsors of that particular car when it was conceived in the mid-80s. I think it was 1986, if memory serves me correctly. And it was debuted at the Castrol 500 at Sandown, the car in that livery. And he'll get the honours of being the one to set the first times. A little bit of a miss of the apex at turn 1. Picks up turn 2 and 3. As we head on board from the roof cam, something that they wouldn't have had back in the ATCC Group A days. Up to turn 5. A left-hander heading along towards turn 6, and now up to Hutt Street. This part of the circuit normally would turn right here for the V8 supercars. At the GP layout through the flip-flop, turn 7 and 8. And then now at turn 9, a very short run down the Jones Straight up to Brewery Bend. You get sucked in sometimes to think that you have to turn left there, but in fact you have to turn right. And then the big drag all the way down to turn 11, the Decaturville Terrace hairpin. Turning in for the corner early on this particular occasion. And now we're into the parkland section of the circuit. Continuing left-handers. The car just on an outlap just ahead shouldn't be a factor in this particular occasion. Although it's gone around, that's the Brian Munn VL Commodore that's gone around at the final corner. Doesn't pose any dramas. And Terry Marwood will stop the clocks at a 1:42.9, which is pretty much spot on the money for what he did as the free practice benchmark just prior to qualifying starting. Although immediately surpassed by Shannon Wright in the Volvo by a tenth of a second. And I think Nathan Higginson might be still a little bit happy on the loud pedal. Some 7 seconds adrift of the times that have currently been posted. Here's Shannon Wright, actually just pulling off the circuit in one of the runoff areas. Not sure if he's doing that to let somebody through. Looks like he might be letting Nathan Higginson go through. Indeed he is. Just 4 drivers with times at the moment. You'll see there's 2 on the side there. There's a Shannon Wright and John Wright. John Wright piloting the VL number 43. He's the one in P4 at the moment. His namesake Shannon Wright at the very top of the timesheets at the moment. Go back to Marwood, who's continued on. I'll wait to see if we get a better sector time for him. Sector timing doesn't appear to be up and running, so we'll unfortunately have to rely on the times as they cross the line. And Marwood's lap that time around was a 43.429, so not as quick as his first effort. Brian Munn, which was the car that we saw spinning at the final corner, just as Marwood was completing his lap, has now gone to position 4 and appears to be already back in the pits. John Wright looking to better his mark. Around the second to last corner, down to the final hairpin, taking a narrow line. Let's allow that car to understeer through the final corner. And it is an improvement on his last effort, improvement by some 8 seconds to a 1:52.8, just stopping on the main drag there, and back to the pits he goes. Another driver has arrived in the server. This one at the helm of the number 20 Nissan Skyline R31. It'll be Brett Willis. First laps for him at the moment. Shannon Wright leaving the pits. The R31 now commences its first lap. It's gone very, very deep. Outbraked himself into the opening chicane. Very, very costly mistake. Might have a flat spot to go with it on the front right there as well. Car did not want to cooperate. Behind him appears to be Nathan Higginson. And possibly behind him, one of the VLs. There it is. That's the VL behind Nathan Higginson, belonging to Brian Munn. So out of the 8 drivers that are present tonight, only 5 with times on the board. Those without a time so far, or without a time of really any significance, Brett Willis, Dylan Call and Stephen Shadlow. Call and Shadlow, the Mazda RX-7 pilots. Oh, there's a big accident back there at Brewery Bend. And there's 2 cars together. That's the Brian Munn car, and then there was another one there as well. I think that may have been Terry Marwood involved in that one. Huge shunt. Car understeering completely off at Brewery Bend. He did say, and he's had another moment there as well, straight into the turn 1, 2, 3 fence. We did say Brewery Bend can suck you in a little bit. The road bends to the left, but the track goes to the right. You're going to be paying very, very close attention to your approach for that corner. It's one of the RX-7 pilots. This one belongs to Dylan Call. And he again is yet to set a truly representative time. Just 5 minutes 40 remaining. The only man in the pits at the moment seems to be John Wright. So firing up the big rotary. This will probably be a pretty quick lap. Bit of talk in the live chat before the race started tonight about how to try and make the RX-7s not so slow in a straight line relative to their General Motors counterparts. And the general consensus was that keeping the corner speed up in the RX-7s is where the time is going to be made relative to the big V8s. This is where the RX-7 will start to take a bit of pain. These 2 straights, the Jones straight up to Brewery Bend, no such problems this time for Dylan Call. And now this drag down the very, very long Brabham straight. Through the hairpin at turn 11. Now through the parkland section, getting up on the curb. Just under 4 minutes remaining in the qualifying session. Second car we've seen taking a narrow approach to turn 16. And the time for Dylan Call is a 1:52.173. So good enough to go ahead of John Wright's VL at this particular point in time. Oh, big lock up going into turn 4. Got it turned in. Just one driver yet to set a lap time of any significance. Oh, we've just seen another moment for Brett Willis in the Skyline R31 going through the flip-flop at turns 7 and 8. I'm not sure if he got the fence there or not. Certainly very close to getting the fence. And we now have his time from Stephen Shadlow. His time is good enough for 4th, so he's moved up ahead of Brian Munn and Dylan Call. Out in front, it's still Shannon Wright in the Volvo 240. Is yet to be surpassed. That time from very early on in the session is yet to be beaten. He's yet to better it as well. And Terry Marwood is also yet to find any improvement on his time. That gap first to second has stayed at 0.38 seconds for the entire length of this qualifying session. Trying to get some temperature into the tyres of the Nissan. There's Brett Willis. But he's got a very, very fast Terry Marwood behind him, so he's going to have to get a wriggle on. He doesn't want to impede the VK, who's winding it up for another attempt at a flyer here. Here he is. Actually got out of the way there, did Brett Willis. Possibly locked a brake and went off. It's good news for this man. Gives him some clear track, no traffic to contend with as he tries to wrestle away pole position from Shannon Wright. No such problems at Brewery Bend. Very nice, very neat and tidy through Brewery Bend. Took a very nice line and not too much curb on the inside. Didn't unsettle the car. As one Dennis Cometti would say, it's centimetre perfect through that corner. And gets it stopped very nicely for the hairpin. Now it's all about making it dance through these couple of corners. Good brake, good throttle modulation. Now Shannon Wright and Brian Munn are in the pits, so they've got no opportunity to improve, so Wright does not have a chance to respond to any improvement that Terry Marwood sets down here. And what does he do? He goes top. He found a full 0.4 of a second on that particular lap, and he doesn't have to go again, but it looks like he is. Time has expired, so checkered flag is out, so the final laps are being put down here. Nathan Higginson looking to improve. Looks like Dylan Call has improved his time to a 1:52, almost a 1:52 flat. It stays in position 6. And just ahead of Higginson on the road is the RX-7, I believe, of Stephen Shadlow. Yep, there he goes. There goes the Red Bull Mazda RX-7. So next time to flash up will be for this man. Currently position 4. Going to have to find a huge chunk of time to improve. Higginson's not going to improve if he slides out of turn 14 like that. Neither is Shadlow. Shadlow's gone off on the approach to the hairpin. And that, unfortunately for him, is some circle work and some lawn mowing on the outside of the hairpin. Meanwhile, we switch back to Higginson. We cycle through. And can he find any improvement? No, doesn't find any late improvement there at all. So Terry Marwood has the honour of pole position for the first race of this evening. 15 lap encounter. So judging by the lap times that we're seeing there, somewhere in the vicinity of around 25, 26 minutes for 15 laps. And just the 8 cars taking to the track for proceedings. Just waiting on few things to get sorted. Talking about whether or not pit stops may be required for tonight's race. There's a few queries depending on how drivers press the car and how they push as to whether or not there will be any need for stops. Just waiting to see how all this is working out. A couple of cars just waiting for them to make their way to the starting grid. Good to see a few comments coming through in the live chat. Some familiar faces from over at the other side of proceedings for Mobilista Australia. And it looks like we're set for a race start here. And the field's away already. There's a little bit of calamity at the back. The two RX-7s look like they got together and heading up the field. It looks like Shannon Wright has managed to get away cleanly at the front. Nathan Higginson already challenging Marwood on the run into turn 4 as well. And there's been some calamity going on at the back of the field as well. There's already cars off at turn 4. John Wright involved. Brian Munn involved. Looks like the RX-7, one of the RX-7s was involved as well. The Shadlow RX-7 was involved as well. And looks like there might be just a little bit of activity that needs to be sorted out here. And then we'll be back to racing. At the moment we've got Shannon Wright still well and truly in command of this race. He has stretched out an enormous lead as we just wait for a couple of little technical dramas to sort themselves out here. Right, we just resolve the technical dramas. Back to live pictures now. The Flying Brick well and truly in command. The number 23 has a nice margin at the moment. 1.3 seconds back to the pole sit-up, but a very nice launch off the line. Nathan Higginson has had a good start as well. Tailing these guys, just a little bit leery out of turn 16. And then behind them, there was the chaos that unfolded with these guys. Brian Munn, Dylan Call, John Wright, all those guys getting together at turn 4 on the previous lap. Different lines for turn 1. Run through without a problem. I'm not sure what Call was doing there. He was very well wide of the ideal line for the chicane. Not in a position to threaten coming into turn 4 this time, so no repeat of the opening lap antics. Although Brian Munn's off the road there very temporarily as well. Just dropped a couple of wheels in the grass, keeps it pointing the right direction. Doesn't use all the exit curb at turn 6. He's now got his skates on and very, very quickly marching away from the RX-7 of Dylan Call. Behind them, it's all pretty well spread out as well. Stephen Shadlow recovering, John Wright recovering, and Brett Willis started on the rear of grid, also recovering. Go back to the front. Shannon Wright probably not too far from being well and truly under siege here from the pole sitter Terry Marwood. Marwood's decided to go to the pits. Okay, this is an interesting development. We weren't probably expecting this early in the race, so I'm not sure if that is a pit stop being required issue, but it looks like it is. I'm not sure if he's forgotten to either put fuel in or take tyres or something. That's very, very early for a stop. As we cycle back, that will promote Nathan Higginson to second place. Brian Munn will now go up to third place. His quickest lap, of course, being the first flying lap. Oh, a bit sideways coming into turn 1. Had to gather it up. That'll lose him some time to Higginson. Munn had really put the hammer down in the last lap. Pulled out a very, very big advantage over Dylan Call. And now continues on after that awkward moment through turn 1. Now Marwood appears to be on the move again after coming into the pits, and yes he is. He's come out just ahead of Stephen Shadlow. So we have to get the lowdown on what may have happened to Terry Marwood after the race proceedings are over. As I said, there was a bit of chat between the drivers just before the session got underway as to whether or not a pit stop might be required. We certainly weren't expecting one that early, even if they were required. So Marwood's next target will be Dylan Call's RX-7. The RX-7, a very popular car, still in modern day racing, predominantly in local state series, mostly making appearances in improved production. All sorts of parts you can buy for those cars. There's some very, very quick RX-7s out there. I think one of the quickest ones that we see at the moment comes out of Queensland as Marwood gets the job done on the inside at turn 16, the final corner. So that's one spot for him. And he'll now set out in pursuit of Brian Munn's VL Commodore. There's Brian Munn. Got about a 2.5 or so second margin. Coming down all the time though. Coming back to the RX-7s. One of the quickest RX-7s in the country at the moment comes out of the improved production stable in Queensland, piloted by a youngster by the name of Zach Hudson, still a teenager. And Phil Laird, renowned builder in Queensland, responsible for putting that RX-7 together. Another one of the very quick RX-7s in Victoria at the hands of Victorian improved production racer in form of Ben Schutz, who's done a lot of motorsport himself, driving for Richard Bendel, and every now and again he dusts off that RX-7. That RX-7 holds a track record for its class at Sandown, which is a venue that we'll be visiting in this series a bit later on. Oh, and there's a moment here for Brian Munn. Now, he was in the process of being passed at the hairpin by Terry Marwood, and Marwood has gone through without a problem. Dylan Call's now gone through, so we're not sure if there was some contact there or not. He just was in the front of our picture as that pass was happening. So now, big defensive line from Call going through turn 16. As Terry Marwood sets the fastest lap of the race that time around, a 1:43.808. Only 2 tenths quicker than Shannon Wright's best lap. But the problem for Shannon Wright is that best lap came on lap 2, and his last lap around was a 1:48.6 relative to Marwood's 1:43. But there's still an awfully big gap, 20 plus seconds between a race leader and Terry Marwood in third, and Nathan Higginson's Mustang in between. So Munn has managed to get past Dylan Call for the second time this race. He'll continue his march on. Elsewhere, a bit further up the order, Terry Marwood can see Nathan Higginson's Mustang ahead, and Higginson going a little bit deep into the hairpin. That'll cost him some time. And here he is, just controlling his aggression a little bit now. Not so happy on the loud pedal like he was in qualifying, trying to pick up the best time. The livery of the car he is in, the Dick Johnson liveries, one of the Group A cars, 1985. The engine in this car, it's one thing that became a bit of an issue in improved production. Higginson gets a bit leery out there at turn 4. The engine in this car was the subject of a bit of debate in improved production circles recently, as a couple of queries had gone out as to whether the legality of this engine was allowed, and the ruling was yes. Whatever the engine is in this car, it's not having a very big moment right now, as Higginson's got a real fistful of opposite lock, left and right. Somehow manages to keep pointing the right direction, but not before Terry Marwood was able to slip through on the inside. Right out sideways moment for Nathan Higginson, several times in fact. He's calmly in third now and comfortably ahead of Brian Munn. Last time around, another fastest lap of the race from Terry Marwood, a 1:42.9. He's going to really need to string together the Hollywood laps at the moment. Shannon Wright has started to respond. He's picked up his pace. It was a 1:44 last time around, just across the line now, a 1:43. We're just seeing Brett Willis just on the inside there at turn 13. So he's now gone actually 2 laps down. Sorry, 1 lap down, because Shannon Wright has commenced his 7th lap. So Brett Willis a lap down to the field. And he's just on the back end of the shot there behind. That's a bit of an awkward moment for Marwood through the chicane. Probably would have racked up very lucky not to rack up a curb strike for that one there. I just seen Brian Munn is showing up as going into pit lane on this particular lap as well. So where he is on the circuit at the moment, potentially he may cop up position to Shadlow, and he does. So Shadlow goes through, Dylan Call will also go through, so the RX-7s will move up to positions 4 and 5 on the road, while Brian Munn is in the pit lane. Not sure if John Wright is close enough to wrestle position 6 away. Maybe a little bit close for Call, but now the 2 VLs running line astern. But Wright not quite close enough to put Brian Munn into position 7. He's just up the road. We've seen him coming onto the front straight. Eyes would have lit up and said, "You beauty, I've got another position here," but just wasn't quick enough on the last lap to make it count, despite the fact that he set his best lap on the previous lap as well of a 1:52.665 for John Wright. As Brian Munn just misses the apex at turn 8. Oh, bounces across the outside the curbs at turn 9 as well. And very lucky not to get the wall on the outside there as well. Through Brewery Bend. And we're ticking off the laps here. The leader has commenced lap 8. So just over the halfway point now. And the two leaders' positions 1 and 2 pretty evenly matched last time around. As around for about the third time goes Brian Munn. Now John Wright will now finally get that position that he thought he might get, or will he? No, not quite. So Munn able to recover relatively quickly. That'll be an enormous frustration for John Wright. And Wright decides it's time to have a pit stop. So in comes the number 43 Penwright VL. And Brian Munn continues on his way. So Terry Marwood not really eating into the advantage of Shannon Wright at this time. Last time around, it was a 144 flat for Shannon Wright and a 144.1 for Terry Marwood. Shannon Wright this last lap around this time is a 144.4, and we'll get the timing interval for Terry Marwood now is another 144.1. So back-to-back 144.1s for Terry Marwood. The gap's still a very, very huge 23 seconds. John Wright does the right thing, leaves some room for the car that is a lap ahead. And Brian Munn and Stephen Shadlow found each other again. In fact, Brian Munn has gotten back past the RX-7 again. I'm starting to keep a running count here of how many times Brian Munn has had to get back past that RX-7. I think the count is now up to 3. He's had a bit of a wretched time after passing the car, getting quite a healthy advantage, and then quite a few mistakes, and then having to repeat all that work all over again. Interesting line for Brian Munn, not taking the conventional staying wide line, and then across the apex at turn 16. As into the pits comes Shadlow, and then race leader is in back of shot there. So Shannon Wright not too far away from putting Brian Munn a lap down. So not only has John Wright and Brett Willis gone a lap down, Stephen Shadlow's now gone a lap down to the race leader as well. We'll cycle back on track. Here is Dylan Call, who's the next man up the road from Brian Munn. Now that gap is currently somewhere in the realms of about 5 seconds. You'll be able to see Brian Munn coming through back of shot shortly if he's able to pick up the pace, and I expect that he will. With Munn's best lap coming on the previous tour, a 148.8, and it was a bit of a shocker for Dylan Call, a 157 flat, and when I say flat, I do mean flat, 000 on the end. So he's going to have to get a wriggle on, because there's only 5 laps to go once these guys cross the line, but they have got the race leader bearing down on them, so they may very well go a lap down before this race is over. Oh, and he's not going to be able to get a wriggle on doing things like that, Dylan Call, and he will lose position 4 to Brian Munn, and there it goes, and there goes the race leader. So not only has he lost a position in all of that. He has also lost track position to the race leader, as we can see, is around the final corner now. And they're going to have to contend with a bit of traffic out of the pit lane here. That is the skyline of Brett Willis. It just falls in behind the race leader. So good, sensible driving there. We'll take a look on board from the roof cam of the number 23 as he hunts down, or let's say was hunting down, aside from that little moment across the outside of the grass at turn 4. Heading up to Hutt Street. He tries to reel in the VL Commodore of Brian Munn to put him a lap down. At this rate, looking like there'll only be possibly 3 cars to finish the race on the lead lap. I'm not 100% sure how the grid for the second race is going to line up tonight. Been hearing rumours about possibly a reverse grid race, depending on the circumstances. We'll have to wait another 5 or 10 minutes to find that one out. It's a different line here. Traditional line from Shannon Wright. Very, very odd line from Brian Munn. Oh, Wright thought about a move up the inside at 12. Now gets it done at 13, but he hits the wall, and that's collected Brian Munn in the process. So that all started a couple of corners ago with Wright being a little bit of an unsure as to where he was going to make the pass. Overcommitted, getting into turn 13, and is now going to dive into the pit lane. Oh, as Brett Willis completely misses the brake marker point for the final corner. It's gone sailing into the fence. There he is, and back a shot. So that lets Brian Munn off the hook. Allows him to stay on the lead lap. Just by a slight mistake from the race leader. And that will mean that Shannon Wright has lost his lead to Terry Marwood. So that particular incident at turn 13 has proven very costly for the Flying Brick, the Volvo 240. And it hands the lead of this race back to the man who started on pole aboard the Perkins and Holm liveried VK Commodore. And all he's got to do is just bring it home from here, because the lead that he has over Shannon Wright is somewhere in the vicinity of the same deficit when the positions were reversed. Good to see a couple of familiar faces in the live stream. Good to see John McDonald correcting yourself that, yes, that is how you say there. My English teacher would have done exactly the same thing to me. Except I don't think I would have been smacked. I probably would have been hit with detention to go along with it. Also, I'm not sure what school you were at when they were still smacking people for grammatical errors. So everything is settled down for the last couple of laps of this race. All that remains to be seen is whether or not Terry Marwood needs to make a stop. Behind him, Shannon Wright in second. Nathan Higginson comfortably in third. Pretty much can't go any higher than what he has right now. So here's Shannon Wright just through turn 15 now to the hairpin. Go all the way back to Nathan Higginson. He is on the Brabham straight. So that gives you an idea of how far apart second and third place are in this interesting chaotic race. Oh, a bit of spot of drifting from Nathan Higginson, right out sideways with a bit of assistance from the outside curb on the approach to turn 11. Wondering if he knows he's on the broadcast. I've heard rumours sometimes that a handful of drivers do like to put the live stream up to see how they're tracking, whether it's on a mobile phone or another computer screen somewhere. word of advice, guys, probably not something that you want to do. Especially when you're driving. Higginson with a bit of an unusual approach to turn one, using pretty much all the road there was available right up to the fence. Oh, a little bit wide, a little bit deep. Tag the fence on the way in, tag the fence on the way out, and tag the fence a third time for good measure. So they always say bad things happen in threes. Well, that's now four because he's hit the fence again. Just a little bit overcommitted again into the braking zone for turn four. The left-hand rear quarter panel got the fence, and the front left fender got the fence, and then the right rear quarter panel got the fence, and then I think on the move out, the front right fender got the fence as well. So he got the fence with all four corners of the car, did Nathan Higginson that time around. And now receiving word the pits are officially closed. So with just 2 laps to go, the pits are closed. Riders started to just take a little bit of time out of Terry Marwood, but still really a huge deficit to overhaul. Fastest lap of the race for Shannon Wright that time around, a 1:42.339. So that is some 0.6 of a second better than the lap set by Terry Marwood, which had stood for probably the better part of the last 7 or 8 laps. And he pulls it out on lap 13. Bit of brake locking going in on the left, the right front. I'm wondering if that's just a bit of a symptom of some of the damage that he's probably carrying from that moment with Brian Munn a couple of laps ago down at turn 13. Probably a fender or something rubbing on that tyre, just a little bit of a drama that he needs to manage for the rest of this race. Barring a mistake, I don't think he's going to overhaul Terry Marwood at this particular juncture. Although the gap is coming down, wondering whether Terry Marwood just is taking it a little bit easy out in front right now. The gap that was about 17 seconds has now gone down to 15.4. Wondering if Marwood might be fuel saving here. Let's go up and have a look and see what Terry Marwood's up to. Doesn't look like he's fuel saving. There's Brian Munn having another moment at the final corner and just crawling around the final corner. So maybe wonder whether or not that may have been the reason why the lap time started to come down. Final lap has commenced for the opening race of this 2-race evening for the Assetto Corsa Aussie Downunder series. Shannon Wright still with the fastest lap of the race, and that lap time around only 0.2 shy of the lap he put in just a few moments ago for best lap. So a late charge, unfortunately, looks like it's not going to amount to anything of any real significance. And the entire field up to position 3 has been lapped. So only the top 3 positions will finish this race on the lead lap. Only a handful of corners to go now. And Terry Marwood in cruise control. 1:44 last time around, so he doesn't need to push the car. He's got margin in hand. And a little bit of lap traffic just a bit further ahead won't pose any problems for the race leader. Around the final hairpin, around the Decaturville Terrace hairpin for the final time. And through the Parkland section of the circuit down to the final corner, and it'll be race victory number 1 of the season for Terry Marwood. Apart from an early drama, drove pretty well and recovered well after Shannon Wright needed to come in for damage. The race was Wright's to lose, and unfortunately he lost it to Marwood in the end. Great job for Terry Marwood. Shannon Wright, position 2 at the end of the day, was position 2 on the grid, but led a very good portion of that race when Marwood found himself in a little bit of trouble. Still half a lap to go for Nathan Higginson. But he will come home will come to the line knowing that He doesn't need to worry about any cars behind because he is 1 lap ahead of 4th place man Brian Munn, who's crossed the line. Dylan Call looks like he's not too far from crossing the line either. And a couple of corners to go for the Mustang driver. And it looks like he doesn't need to worry about that. So that is race number 1 of proceedings over and done with. And we now wait to see how things go with the second race of proceedings tonight. Looks like we might be getting underway relatively quickly, which means we're going to a progressive grid format. Just a little bit of a countdown between now and the next session getting underway. So your order out of that one: Marwood, Wright, Shannon Wright that is, and Nathan Higginson, your top 3 finishes there. Brian Munn coming home in 4th place. He was the first of the lapped runners. And all positions 4, 5, 6 and 7 were 1 lap down at the flag, with Brett Willis the only car that was 2 laps down after everything happened there. All right, looks like we are going with the reverse grid, I think. There's a couple of drivers that are at the head, so it looks like Brian Munn may be on pole position for this one. We are just waiting for a few things to sort themselves out here. And then we will be getting underway for race 2. Be interesting to see how some of these drivers manage to get through from a bit further down the order. A couple of drivers have actually gone back to the pits here. I'm wondering if we're not sure if we're getting an aborted start or not, but we have got a few drivers that are on the move at the moment and a couple of other drivers that are in the pits. So just waiting to see what's happening here as Brian Munn has led the field away at the beginning of the race. And he's already under siege from Shannon Wright, just waiting for a couple of little gremlins to sort themselves out. And already there's a little bit of shenanigans going on at the back of the field. And Brian Munn, who was leading this race, or led away, is now around at, or he's between turns 5 and 6. He's got to get reverse gear there. He's got to be careful because he's got, I was about to say the Nissan of Brett Willis was right there. And there'll be some damage on that VL Commodore. Now, I was about to say there was a couple of drivers that jumped back to the pits. And I'm not sure of the reason for that. John Wright and Terry Marwood both ended up in pit lane just as the red light was about to be extinguished for the beginning of this race. So it leaves Shannon Wright in the lead from Nathan Higginson and Stephen Shadlow, the RX-7, behind them. So we're just waiting to see if anything has happened to Terry Marwood, or if he's gone out after everybody has left, and it looks like he might actually still be in the pits. So I'm wondering whether or not he's actually there he is. He's in there behind the Mustang safety car. So his race could be over before it even starts. Very unusual. So it's right from Higginson and Shadlow at the moment. Shadlow having to keep ahead of the other RX-7 pilot, Dylan Call. Whenever I take a look at the livery on this RX-7, it reminds me of Kiwi drifter Mad Mike Widett. Red Bull backing. Certainly won't want to be drifting it around this side, and he doesn't want to be doing that either. He's walloped 2 walls on the run out of 4. caught the left-hand side, on the left-hand side, exiting turn 4, and then it speared the car over to the right. So there'll be a little bit of damage on either fender for the Red Bull RX-7. And now moves up to the back section of the course, uses all the ripple strip and the back side of it on the Jones Straight. And he'll now go through Brewery Bend and run down. Oh, got a little bit out of control, but just kept it pointing in the right direction over the curbs at Brewery Bend. And drag racing now down to turn 11 hairpin. Sadly, it looks like Terry Marwood is possibly out of this race. Cause unknown, not quite sure. An out-braking moment there for Shadlow. Doing his best to keep ahead of Dylan Call for the moment. Let's see how evenly matched these guys are as they get to the control line at the end of lap 2. First flying laps. Really don't take into account the opening lap. It was a standing start. But on the flying lap, 51.5 and a 51.0 for Dylan Call behind. So Call 0.5 of a second faster on that particular occasion. His opening lap was actually 3 seconds slower than Stephen Shadlow. And now he starts to try and pull a little bit of that deficit back if he can. So he pulled 0.5 on that particular lap. And if Shadlow continues to drop some wheels in the grass like that, he's going to find a little bit more of that advantage is going to be eaten away in quick succession. And it looks like Dylan Call might just be losing a bit of time here. Gap now out to nearly 3 seconds. And visually it looks like he's lost a little bit of time too. So I think the performance of Shadlow's RX-7 probably a little bit better at this stage of the race. He starts to find his groove. He's a little bit wide at the hairpin there. Winds up the rotary and heads into the parkland section of the circuit. Oh, had a bit of a moment there. Looked like he was heading for the grass. Now down to the final corner, taking a more traditional line than some of the other competitors we've seen tonight. Staying a bit wider, turning in later for an apex pretty much right across the middle of the corner. And well, Live Timing disagrees there with my theory that Dylan Call had lost a bit of time on that previous lap. He has lost a lot of time now. Last lap around, he was 1/10 of a second quicker than Shadlow. The gap now has ballooned out. Looks like he made a mistake back there at the opening corner to Dylan Call. And looks like Marwood is now rejoined the circuit, so he's actually a lap down. You can see him back a shot there as we go back to Dylan Call, and then there's Terry Marwood behind. So whatever happened to Marwood, maybe even a case of, as Marwood goes down the inside now at turn number 7, maybe in a case of maybe Marwood wasn't expecting the race to start as early as it did. He will have a lot of work to do. I mean, he's a lap down, and he's going to have to range up onto the back of Brian Munn pretty quickly. And that gap, when we're looking at for first position, he's 135 seconds behind is Terry Marwood. And then Brian Munn, Brett Willis and John Wright, they're all within a very short space of each other at the moment. And they are some 50 seconds up the road from Terry Marwood. Their lap times are, for Brett Willis, it's in the 2-minute bracket. Munn and Wright are in the 48s and 51s, respectively. Actually, both in that time around were a 51. So Marwood can probably make up a couple more spots, but it's going to be a very difficult challenge. But it's these two men on screen that are the next ones, or not quite the next ones up the order. They'll be the ones that he's probably going to be targeting if he can get there. The next man that Terry Marwood needs to get onto the back of is this man in Brett Willis. Yeah, just doing the mental math here, it's some odd 50 to 60 seconds between the two of them in the minute, so better part of half a lap. So as Brett Willis comes across the line to start lap 5, Terry Marwood behind is on the run down to Brewery Bend. Nice little slide through that corner. Oh, out of control moment for Stephen Shadlow behind as well, up on two wheels going through Brewery Bend. Marwood has got a lot of work to do. Bit deep, just overcommitting, just pushing a little bit too hard. Gets around the corner pretty quickly though. Good car control. At this point in time, fastest lap of the race belongs to Shannon Wright, 1:43.154. No surprises there. Out in front to the tune of 9 or so seconds and doing as he pleases. Nathan Higginson's best lap is not too shabby either, a 1:43.6. And then between them, the fastest in terms of fastest laps, this man, Terry Marwood's 1:43.327, which was not the lap just gone, it was the lap before. Last lap around for Marwood, a 1:43.6. Compared to Brett Willis's 2:06.8, so big amount of time gone there, and that gap has now gone down to about 25 seconds or so between the 7th and 8th place drivers. So you expect if he continues on at this pace, another two-wheel moment there through the flip-flop, if he continues on at this pace, he will comfortably get Brett Willis between now and end of the race, and especially he'll get some of the other drivers if they continue to do things like this. So John Wright having to make a stop. That'll put him around Brett Willis, I would imagine, if he comes out of the pits at roughly the same particular part of the racetrack. I wonder if Brett Willis is having a bit of a moment here, whether he's got a fuel pickup problem or something, because he's heading for the lane as well. So that position 7 is about to be evaporated, and John Wright is on the move at the moment. I'm not sure why he's got a bit of white panels there. Nathan Higginson giving him a real hurry up through the centre S, and now being let through. Oh, Higginson having a little bit of a, again, continuing to have a little bit of fun on the loud pedal. And in fact, Terry Marwood has now cleared Brett Willis by virtue of the fact that Willis is in the pits. And now we can have a look at the deficit between Terry Marwood and John Wright, which now stands at 20 seconds. So Marwood just coming through turn 5 now. As we track up to John Wright, he has just exited turn 9, heading down to Brewery Bend. So a little bit of margin to go. Also another change for positions 3 and 4, with Stephen Shadlow taking back position 3, with Dylan Call making a stop as well. But already some 1 minute and 10 seconds behind the race leader after not even half distance yet. Oh, and he's had a moment there too. He's gone right out into the fence. The car looks like it's just shaking off the bits of grass and bits of tyre that it's just inherited from the barrier, and gets going again. Bit of a clumsy braking mistake there into turn 5. Gets on with proceedings. And Brian Munn now in the pits, which means Terry Marwood probably going to get another position very shortly. And here he comes around the final corner. So Marwood picking off another one. Hopefully he's got a full tank and he'll be able to retain that position. He wouldn't want to come and have to stop again between now and the end of the race with all the work that he's having to put in. And John Wright still the next man up the road for Terry Marwood. The gap now 11 seconds. So big disparity in the lap times. Having a look at the live timing, a 1:43.7 last time around for Marwood and a 1:57.6 for Wright. So I guess a big difference not only in some of the cars and the car performance, but car setup and also driver commitment around this nearly 3.8k Adelaide street circuit. I think a number of South Australians probably still disappointed that they lost the Grand Prix in the end of 1995 and it went over to Albert Park. One of the things about the Grand Prix circuit as well is that the more dominant team of the era was actually the McLaren team, who won a total of 5 races over the 11 years that Grand Prix was held in Adelaide. And Williams, who won the inaugural race in 1985, only won 4, with the remainder being split over Benetton and Ferrari. And Williams having the honours of winning not only the last race, but the second last race as well. So 1995 Damon Hill and 1994 was Nigel Mansell. Only one, actually 2, looking through the list here on the history stage, actually 3 duplicate winners. The Adelaide Formula 1 Grand Prix as well. Alain Prost, both for McLaren in 86 and 88. Ayrton Senna, both for McLaren with 2 different power plants, 91 and 93. And Gerhard Berger, who was the only man of those 2 to do it for 2 different manufacturers, once for Ferrari in 1987 and again for McLaren with Honda Power in 1992. One of the very few races that Williams didn't win in their dominant 1992 season. And speaking of being dominant, Terry Marwood dominating the lap time board at the moment as he continues to round up other drivers here. A little bit of an awkward moment there with John Wright potentially looking at coming back down the inside at the hairpin. But no such luck for him this time around as Marwood continues his march up the positional standings. Oh, and John Wright, just another bit of a loose moment. Not the only car that we've seen had a moment at turn 13 tonight. But lucky to get away with it there. Oh, and he's sliding out of control as well on the run to turn 16. So he's got to gather it up here. Another handful of laps to go. So the next man up the order for Terry Marwood is Stephen Shadlow. That's a 10-second deficit in itself. So Stephen Shadlow, here he is up at turn 5. We'll go back to Marwood, just entering turn 4. So there's another position on offer here over the remaining 5 laps for Terry Marwood. And then the task that starts to get a little bit harder with Dylan Call being another, what are we looking at here? Another 30 seconds or thereabouts up the road from Stephen Shadlow. There goes the race leader in Shannon Wright. Actually, sorry, I shouldn't say the race leader in Shannon Wright because it looks like he's come in for a stop. All of that talking about the Adelaide Grand Prix has promoted Nathan Higginson into the race lead. So a bit of a moment for the Mustang pilot. He's got 4 laps to go. By the time he gets to the line this time around, has a 10-second advantage. There goes Terry Marwood through on the inside of Stephen Shadlow. So Shadlow's made a mistake somewhere. It looks like he made a mistake down at the bottom end of turn 11, and Marwood has gone sailing through. So position 4 for Terry Marwood, and now has to pit. So into the lane he comes. Now, if my memory serves me correctly, Stephen Shadlow had already stopped a bit earlier in this race, so he's going to get that position back. John Wright's going to get that position back. Brett Willis is going to get 1 lap back against Terry Marwood. Ooh, big commitment at turn 1 for Shadlow, but almost out of control there. But with 4 laps to go, the question now becomes, does Nathan Higginson have to stop? Because if he doesn't, he's doing some lap times that would be comfortable enough to hold off Shannon Wright, but he needs to keep doing good lap times. He's not going to be able to do good lap times doing that, no. Walloping the wall on the exit of Brewery Bend, on the wrong side of the exit of Brewery Bend as well. And he can now see Shannon Wright's Volvo in his rearview mirror. So it's going to be all about eyes forward here for the next 3 1/4 laps. Sorry, 4 1/4 laps, I should say. We're on lap 11. We've got 4 more to go. One of the little nuances we're trying to work out here about live timing. And no, Nathan Higginson needs to stop. So in he comes. Dylan Call machine on the main straight. And that is going to give the lead back to Shannon Wright. Only a very quick stop for Nathan Higginson. So he's on the move again. So not as long in the pit lane as we thought he probably was going to be, but still a comfortable second over Dylan Call. And we look at the gaps. Higginson 3.2 seconds now behind Shannon Wright. Stephen Shadlow pops in his best lap of the race. On the lap just gone, a 1:48.783. He's about 1.2 seconds quicker on the fastest lap ahead of his RX-7 counterpart in Dylan Call. My fellow co-commentators in Automobilista Australia will be looking at the number 23 machine with Gusto. That's Hans Brunswick and the Ecure Brunswick team, also in a ATCC series over at AMS Oz, having their run around this particular week. There'll be 3 laps remaining by the time the race leader gets to the stripe this time around. Higginson's held his own pretty well in this race. With a little bit of calamity that went on at the beginning, he has comfortably held on to second place, where everybody around him has made some mistakes, although I think he may have made a little mistake there just coming out of turn 13 and 14, which is a little bit slow. We go around the final corner. Ooh, takes a bit of curb, didn't need to do that. And it looks like there's been another move with John Wright has inherited a position over not only Brian Munn but Stephen Shadlow. Shadlow's had a moment. He's lost 2 spots here, so he's gone down the order. Just saw that change very quickly on the graphics. So he's had another moment. His second of the night. Second of this race. First one coming up at turn 5. Second one coming there at turn 13 has dropped him 2 spots. So Marwood went through, Wright went through, and Terry Marwood actually went through in a race fastest lap, just enough to unseat the fastest lap of Shannon Wright. So Marwood a 1:43.115 versus Wright's 1:43.154. And now Marwood goes ahead of John Wright. So that very short stop in the pits for Terry Marwood He's now been able to very quickly get past not only John Wright, but also Stephen Shadlow by virtue of the mistake as well. But it'll be a very tall order in the last 2.5 laps to get onto the back of Dylan Call's RX-7, who is some 35 seconds up the road. And is, like Marwood, is a lap down to the race leader. Here is Dylan Call. Just coming down to the final corner where Marwood's just getting down to the hairpin at the bottom end of the straight. Oh, someone spinning around at the back there. Wondering if that's Stephen Shadlow again. So a little bit of a messy end to this race for the Red Bull RX-7 driver. Just saw him having a moment there. He's been across the back of the curbs once or twice from what we've seen earlier in the race, and I think he's just going to have to try and be careful and bring it home from here, because the one car behind him, Brian Munn, is now only 4 seconds behind, and that RX-7 sounds a little bit sick. Not going at the same pace that it was a couple of laps ago. He'll have to see if he can hold on for the remaining 2 laps. Brian Munn, oh, a bit of lawn mowing there as well. Car probably with a little bit of steering wheel down one side or the other. But Brian Munn in the VL behind is, we've got a sniff of 6th place at the moment. He's got 2 laps to find it. Smooth sailing now out in front for this man with a lap and a little bit to go. And Brian Munn has gone past Stephen Shadlow, so the minute we actually cut away from that battle, Shadlow's had another moment and has surrendered 6th place. So I think he's just going to try and limp the car home here for a 7th place finish. He has got a lap in hand over Brett Willis. And you can see just by the way that RX-7 is bouncing across the curbs, that not a very happy race car at all. And probably the smart idea just to try and limp the car home rather than take a stop. And I think he's had another moment there. Yeah, he has, on the outside of the... properly runs over the broadcast camera too and loops it, trying to get onto the Jones straight. So he's not having a good time at the moment. And just probably avoids kissing the wall for good measure. So final lap has commenced for the race leader. And he's now coming up to the flip-flop. It's going to put Brett Willis another lap down by the looks of things here. Stephen Shadlow may actually go a lap down depending on where he is on track relative to Shannon Wright. Down to Brewery Bend for the final time. Couple of corners to go, so it'll be 2 different race winners on the night. One to Terry Marwood aboard the number 11 VK Commodore, and it's going to be a race win for Shannon Wright aboard the Volvo 240 number 23. Nathan Higginson's going to end up with a pair of podiums here, so on debut and a very late entry into tonight's proceedings, he'll be happy with a 3rd place in race 1 and a 2nd place in race 2. Kept his nose clean. So Shannon Wright salutes in race 2. Comfortable margin in the end, 28 seconds back to the green machine of Nathan Higginson. Home on the lead lap in both races, and home 1 position better than what he was in race 2. Ooh, celebrates with a little bit of celebrates with a little bit of a grassy moment on the exit of turn 16, but just going to do the honours this time and looking for the J turn, and that's gone horribly wrong for Higginson. Marwood actually rounded up Dylan Call for position 3, so that was a very close run thing for Nathan Higginson there. With he was still a lap ahead though of Marwood, who only completed who was completed one lap less than the field, but in his haste to have a little bit of fun there, I think he probably got a little overzealous and tried to just do the J-turn when he really didn't quite need to do the J-turn there. So the top three from both races featuring the same drivers on the podium, just in a slightly different order. So race 1 going to Terry Marwood ahead of Shannon Wright and Nathan Higginson, and in race 2 honours going to Shannon Wright ahead of Nathan Higginson. And Terry Marwood, has to be said, probably drive of the day, having started a lap down and pretty much drove through the entire field ahead of him up to position 3, got position 3 right at the death and ends up on the podium. So going to be a pretty even top 3 in the championship after tonight. We'll get a championship standings update during the week, and we'll have that ready for you for next week so you can see where everybody stands. Just as a reminder, the season calendar as it stands. So next week we are off to a little raceway down south called Symonds Plains. A very busy, very fast little circuit on Saturday the 26th of September. And we hope you can join us then. Until now, actually, well, I should say not until now, until then, as I say at the end of all my broadcasts, please drive safely, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.